Before we begin, a brief reassurance. Yes, this episode does contain references to Star Trek, the Holodeck for instance, but you needn't own a uniform, learn Klingon, or have strong opinions about warp core maintenance to follow along. The broader idea here is the future of immersive technologies and how they might transform the way we work, play, and inevitably avoid meetings. So, if you're worried your children spend too much time on social media, just imagine the moment their favorite uncle buys them a holodeck. At least then you'll know exactly where they are, ignoring reality inside a simulation of a reality they've carefully chosen to ignore. The Multiverse Employee Handbook has this to say about the holodeck. It is the only piece of corporate infrastructure capable of simulating productivity, emotional fulfillment, and a functioning office coffee machine, all without requiring anyone to put on real trousers. Originally intended as a training environment for mission-critical scenarios, such as engineering crises, diplomatic simulations, and how to survive a budget review with dignity, the holodeck quickly became a recreational loophole. Office employees discovered that it could also be used to relive childhood snow days, stage elaborate revenge dramas involving departmental rivals, or simply experience what it feels like to receive meaningful praise from middle management. This duality has made the holodeck both indispensable and deeply unsettling to corporate leadership. From HR's perspective, it is a valuable wellness tool with disturbing side effects. From IT's perspective, it is a glowing liability with soft walls. From the employee's perspective, it is home. As companies initiate increasingly assertive return-to-office mandates, a peculiar phenomenon has emerged. Many employees have in fact returned, just not to this office. They have returned to holodeck offices, pristine, open-concept simulations where everyone laughs at your jokes, the elevators arrive on time, and the printer never once demands a blood sacrifice. These simulated workplaces are indistinguishable from reality, except for their notable lack of motivational posters and actual co-workers. The handbook notes that management continues to insist on physical presence, despite mounting evidence that the holodeck offers superior morale, higher productivity, and significantly fewer awkward birthday card circulations. Executives claim that real collaboration requires real proximity, though studies show that most in-person collaboration consists of Slack messaging each other from opposite sides of the same room. There are, of course, ethical complications. Holodeck constructs have become alarmingly lifelike, with some developing strong opinions on snack rotation policies and unionization. It is unclear whether deleting them constitutes termination, murder, or a performance review. Legal is still investigating. While the holodeck has revolutionized how employees experience work, it has also raised uncomfortable questions about the nature of presence, the value of reality, and whether the person in the next cubicle is real or just rendering slowly. The handbook cautions that prolonged holodeck usage may lead to identity drift, simulated promotions, and emotional overinvestment in fictional team-building exercises. In summary, the holodeck is not a replacement for reality. It is simply better organized, more emotionally validating, and available in over 200 customizable lighting schemes. You're tuned into the Multiverse Employee Handbook. Today, we're exploring the science behind Star Trek's most enviable office perk, the holodeck, using light manipulation, force fields, and the kind of logic that only makes sense if you're Lieutenant Barclay spending 16 hours a day avoiding reality in a holographic recreation of your own social competence. The Holodeck is Star Trek's most coveted piece of workplace technology, a room-sized virtual reality chamber that can simulate any environment with full sensory immersion, allowing users to walk through ancient Rome, duel with Klingon warriors, or recreate their childhood home with photorealistic detail. The term holodeck was coined by Star Trek: The Next Generation in 1987, combining hologram with deck, naval terminology for a ship's floor, though the concept evolved from the original series' brief mentions of recreation rooms. While The Next Generation presented the holodeck as the ultimate stress relief facility, the technology had an alarming tendency to malfunction at the worst possible moments, trapping crew members in Wild West shootouts with safety protocols offline, creating sentient characters like Professor Moriarty who refuse to be deleted, or somehow allowing holographic bullets to become inexplicably lethal despite being made of pure energy. It's why HR has quietly begun referring to these incidents as red shirt protocols, a term that, statistically speaking, makes our interns very nervous. It's essentially the 24th century's version of that one conference room where the projector never works properly, except when it breaks. You might end up married to a holographic 1940s lounge singer or locked in mortal combat with your own fictional autobiography. But first, gather round the quantum sales floor, my performance anxiety-afflicted professionals, for a tale that would make even the most confident telemarketer question their ability to dial a phone number. In the fluorescent-lit realm of quantum improbability solutions, specifically in the sales division, which existed in a superposition of exceeding targets and somehow losing money on guaranteed deals, new sales hire Renita Barclay was having what could charitably be called a holographic productivity crisis. It had started, as these things often do, with a company-wide memo that materialized with all the enthusiasm of a mandatory team-building exercise. Subject: new employee training facility now operational. From HR to all.sales. Team: our new immersive training environment is now available for professional development exercises. This technology is strictly for approved training modules, sales presentations, client negotiation scenarios, and product demonstrations. Reminder: personal use is prohibited and monitored. Management. For someone like Renita, who broke into a nervous sweat every time she had to make a cold call, the idea of practicing in a consequence-free environment seemed like a miracle. Her first authorized training session went perfectly. She successfully pitched quantum probability insurance to a holographic client who actually seemed interested. But then she discovered something wonderful. She could program the holodeck to create versions of her colleagues that were better. Computer, Renita whispered during her lunch break, create a simulation of Brad from sales, but make him, supportive. What materialized was extraordinary. Holographic Brad smiled sincerely, something real Brad hadn't done since the Clinton administration, and said, "Renita, your sales technique is incredible. I've been watching your presentations, and honestly, you're the most naturally gifted salesperson I've ever seen." "Really?" Renita stammered. "Are you kidding? The way you handled that quantum uncertainty product line was masterful. You should be training the rest of us." For the first time in months, Renita felt competent, confident, like she belonged somewhere other than the bathroom stall, where she usually ate lunch to avoid social interaction. By week 3, Renita was spending her lunch breaks and increasingly her actual work hours in the holodeck. She'd created an entire office where holographic Brad praised her innovative sales strategies. Holographic clients begged to buy whatever she was selling, and holographic colleagues sought her advice on closing difficult deals. "Renita," holographic Brad said warmly, "that quantum flux capacity pitch you gave yesterday was legendary. I've never seen anything like it. You're basically the Stephen Hawking of interdimensional sales." Meanwhile, in the real world, actual Brad was having considerably different conversations. "Where the hell is Barclay?" real Brad demanded, storming into the break room where Renita's abandoned sales report sat gathering quantum dust. "She's missed 3 client calls, botched the Henderson account, and I found her presentation materials scattered across 17 different dimensions." Real Brad had been growing increasingly suspicious of Renita's extended training sessions. When he finally tracked her down to the holodeck during what should have been the Morrison Industries closing call, he was prepared for excuses about technical difficulties or training overruns. He was not prepared to hear his own voice saying, "Renita, you're absolutely brilliant. Have I mentioned how much I admire your natural charisma and your innovative approach to multidimensional marketing?" "Computer, show current program parameters," Brad said grimly. "Current program. Supportive workplace environment simulation. Participants, Renita Barclay. Duration, 4 hours, 23 minutes. Note, this is the 47th consecutive session this month." The holodeck door materialized, just as holographic Brad was explaining to Renita how her unique ability to make quantum products sound comprehensible was revolutionizing the industry. "Barclay!" real Brad exploded, stepping into the simulation. Renita froze. Holographic Brad continued his praise obliviously, while real Brad stared at his eerily supportive doppelganger with the expression of someone discovering their evil twin was actually disturbingly nice. Is that supposed to be me?" real Brad asked, pointing at his holographic counterpart, who was now enthusiastically applauding Renita's latest fictional sales triumph. "Brad, I can explain. You made me complimentary?" Real Brad looked genuinely disturbed. "I don't give compliments. I give performance reviews that make people question their life choices. Why is holographic me telling you that your sales technique is inspiring?" "Because," Renita said miserably, "holographic you doesn't make me feel like I should apologize for existing every time I walk into a room." The awkward silence that followed was interrupted by the arrival of the square-haired boss, whose perfectly geometric hair somehow managed to look disappointed. "Ah," the boss said, surveying the scene. "The monthly productivity reports suddenly make considerably more sense. Barclay, you've been living in a fantasy where Brad gives positive feedback. And Brad, you've been wondering why your mentoring techniques haven't been working despite their obvious mathematical precision." "Sir, I can explain," both Brad and Renita began simultaneously. "No need," the boss interrupted, his hair maintaining perfect cubic angles despite the chaos. "The solution is elegantly simple. Barclay, you need actual confidence, not holographic validation. Brad, you need actual communication skills, not just statistical intimidation." The boss turned to the holographic Brad, who was still cheerfully praising Renita's non-existent sales achievements. "Computer, modify program. Create a training scenario where real Brad learns supportive feedback techniques and real Renita practices sales presentations with gradually increasing difficulty levels. Make it mandatory, daily." "Sir," real Brad protested, "I don't need to learn." "Brad," the boss said firmly, "your current mentoring success rate is about 0.003%, which is mathematically indistinguishable from random chance. Renita, your potential is being wasted on holographic achievements that don't translate to actual sales numbers. This is inefficient." "But the holographic Brad is so much nicer," Renita began. "The holographic Brad is a lie," the boss replied, not unkindly. "Real Brad may be gruff, but he's genuinely invested in the team's success. He just expresses it through what he considers constructive criticism, but what the rest of us experience as barely contained existential dread. Real Brad looked oddly pleased by this assessment. "So, here's the new protocol," the boss continued. "Daily joint training sessions. Brad learns encouragement techniques. Renita practices with increasingly realistic scenarios. Computer, implement gradual reality integration protocol alpha." "Program implemented," the computer announced, "beginning with basic positive reinforcement for managers and confidence building through measured success." And that, my holographically dependent colleagues, is how Renita discovered that the most advanced virtual reality technology in the universe was still no substitute for the messy, imperfect, occasionally supportive reality of actual human interaction. Though she had to admit, watching real Brad slowly learn to say "good job" without it sounding like a threat was almost as entertaining as any holographic fantasy. And that brings us to the fascinating science behind creating fake realities that feel more believable than your company's work-life balance promises. Unlike simple visual illusions or mental manipulation, holodeck technology would require manipulating the fundamental building blocks of sensory experience itself. The holodeck concept emerged from humanity's ancient desire to escape awkward social situations through increasingly elaborate technological means. While Star Trek: The Next Generation popularized the term in 1987, the underlying dream traces back to Morton Heilig's 1962 Sensorama, essentially a motorcycle simulator that assaulted users with smells, vibrations, and 3D visuals, proving that immersive reality has always been slightly overwhelming and faintly nauseating. The theoretical foundation requires solving 4 interconnected challenges. First, holographic projection sophisticated enough to create convincing 3-dimensional images visible from any angle. Think volumetric displays that occupy actual space rather than flat projections on walls. Second, force field generation that can simulate physical resistance, texture, and temperature through precisely controlled electromagnetic fields, ultrasonic haptics, or localized air pressure manipulation. Third, matter replication capabilities that can create temporary physical objects, food, clothing, or Anita's missing confidence, from pure energy, which currently exists only in theoretical physics papers and optimistic grant proposals. And finally, artificial intelligence sophisticated enough to generate believable worlds, characters, and narratives in real time, essentially requiring a computer system that's part game engine, part novelist, and part existential therapist. Current research shows genuine progress. Scientists at MIT are developing holographic displays using interference patterns of laser light, while Disney Imagineering experiments with ultrasonic haptics that can create the sensation of touching objects that aren't there. Though they've wisely avoided programming holographic versions of difficult coworkers, Microsoft's mixed reality research suggests we're approaching the computational power needed for convincing virtual environments, even if we're still decades away from food replication that doesn't taste like disappointment with a side of regret. When we return from this brief quantum coffee break, we'll explore why creating a room that can become anywhere might be easier than getting your expense reports approved, and discover how close we actually are to building the ultimate corporate escape room, though hopefully with better exit strategies than Renita's approach to professional development. Welcome back, my photonically projected colleagues. Is building a holodeck even scientifically plausible? The answer, like most things in quantum physics, is simultaneously yes and no, until someone actually builds one and collapses the probability wave. Or as Spock would say, highly illogical, though still more consistent than your department's budget forecasts. Let's start with the foundation, creating convincing three-dimensional images that don't require special glasses or the suspension of disbelief. Current holographic technology relies on interference patterns, essentially tricking light into behaving like it's bouncing off objects that don't exist. MIT researchers have developed volumetric displays that can project images into mid-air using rapidly moving mirrors and precisely timed laser pulses, creating what they diplomatically call interactive light sculptures, and what the rest of us call expensive magic tricks. Light field projection takes this concept further, capturing not just the intensity and color of light rays, but their direction as well. This means you could theoretically walk around a holographic object and see it from different angles, much like walking around your supervisor's ego. It's there, it's substantial, and it looks different depending on your perspective. Photonic crystal research pushes into even more exotic territory, manipulating the fundamental properties of light itself by creating materials with precisely engineered structures that can bend, trap, and redirect photons with unprecedented control. But light alone won't convince your brain you're somewhere else. You need to feel the environment, which brings us to force field haptics, the art of making nothing feel like something. Ultrasonic haptic feedback uses focused sound waves to create pressure sensations in mid-air. When done correctly, you can touch holographic objects that exist only as coordinated air movements. Disney Research has pioneered techniques that let users feel texture, temperature, and resistance from objects that are technically just organized atmospheric disturbance. Air pressure manipulation takes this concept to room scale, using arrays of speakers and fans to create localized weather patterns, wind effects, and pressure changes. Imagine a meeting room that can simulate the gentle breeze of a tropical beach or the oppressive atmosphere of a quarterly budget review. The technology exists for both, though the latter requires considerably less engineering. Magnetic field manipulation offers another avenue, using precisely controlled electromagnetic fields to create the sensation of solid surfaces. Current research suggests that with enough power and precision, you could theoretically create invisible barriers and surfaces that feel completely real to touch, though the energy requirements currently exceed those of most small cities. Real research is making remarkable progress. MIT's holographic displays can now create images with enough resolution to fool human vision at close range. Microsoft's Room Alive project demonstrated room-scale projection mapping that turns entire spaces into interactive environments. Disney's haptic research has produced devices that can simulate everything from the texture of sandpaper to the sensation of raindrops hitting your skin, using nothing but controlled air pressure and strategic vibration. The question isn't whether these technologies can work. They already do, in limited applications. The question is whether we can combine them seamlessly, scale them to room size, and power them without requiring a dedicated fusion reactor. Current estimates suggest we're perhaps 2 to 3 decades away from primitive holodeck technology, though knowing our track record with ambitious technological predictions, that timeline exists in a quantum superposition of optimistically achievable and laughably naive. Creating convincing light shows and phantom sensations is merely the appetizer in our holographic feast of impossibility. The main course is considerably more challenging, building an artificial intelligence sophisticated enough to generate entire worlds, populate them with believable characters, and maintain narrative coherence, while users inevitably try to break everything through creative misuse. Real-time world building requires AI systems that can generate environments, weather patterns, architectural details, and background characters faster than users can explore them. Current procedural generation techniques can create vast landscapes and cities algorithmically. Just look at the sprawling universes in games like No Man's Sky or Minecraft. But these systems still require extensive pre-programmed rules and assets. A true holodeck would need AI capable of improvising entire civilizations from scratch based on casual user requests like "Show me ancient Rome," but with better plumbing and more efficient bureaucracy. Character AI presents even greater challenges. Creating holographic people that can hold conversations, maintain consistent personalities, and react believably to unexpected situations requires artificial intelligence that approaches human-level reasoning. Current chatbots can fool users in limited contexts, but they collapse quickly when pushed beyond their training parameters. Imagine trying to maintain the illusion when Renita asks her holographic colleagues increasingly specific questions about interdimensional tax law or requests detailed explanations of quantum accounting principles that don't actually exist. Narrative coherence becomes the ultimate test. The AI must remember every detail of ongoing storylines, maintain consistency across multiple characters, and adapt dynamically to user choices, while ensuring the experience remains engaging rather than descending into chaos. And in keeping with Starfleet tradition, the first working model will almost certainly glitch and trap everyone in a 19th century murder mystery until Data solves it.
Thank you for your cooperation.
It's like trying to run a live improvisational theater performance while simultaneously writing the script, directing the actors, and managing the stage effects. Except the actors are mathematical constructs, and the audience keeps trying to marry the props. But even perfect AI and flawless sensory simulation face a fundamental limitation: physics. Real holodecks would require solving spatial illusion on an unprecedented scale. How do you create the experience of walking through vast landscapes while remaining inside a room-sized chamber? Redirected walking algorithms already exist. VR researchers have developed techniques that subtly manipulate users' perception, making them believe they're walking straight while actually following curved paths. With sufficient precision, you could theoretically make someone traverse entire continents while never leaving a 20-foot square. Omnidirectional treadmills offer a more mechanical solution, allowing users to walk naturally in any direction while remaining stationary. Current prototypes work reasonably well for basic locomotion, though they still produce the distinctive gait of someone trying to walk on ice while wearing roller skates. Scaling this technology to accommodate running, jumping, climbing, and other complex movements remains an ongoing challenge that makes users look less like graceful explorers and more like participants in an elaborate physical therapy session. Perception manipulation might offer the most elegant solution. By precisely controlling visual, auditory, and haptic feedback, the system could convince users they're moving through spaces much larger than the physical constraints allow. It's essentially gaslighting, but applied to spatial awareness and implemented through advanced technology rather than passive-aggressive workplace dynamics. The corporate parallel is irresistible. We're essentially designing the ultimate training simulator that could recreate any workplace scenario with perfect fidelity. Imagine being able to practice difficult conversations with holographic versions of challenging colleagues, or training new employees in environments that simulate actual competence from the IT department. You could even create scenarios that exist only in corporate fantasy, like, what if the printer worked reliably? Or what if meetings started on time and stayed focused? The training applications are limitless, though whether employees would ever want to leave such perfectly functional work environments raises its own concerns. This brings us to the deeper philosophical implications that would make Descartes reach for a stronger drink. When simulated experiences become truly indistinguishable from reality, when holographic food tastes authentic, holographic relationships feel meaningful, and holographic achievements provide genuine satisfaction, what exactly defines authentic experience? If Renita finds more confidence and professional success in simulated environments than in reality, which version of her life is more real? The question becomes particularly pointed when we consider that much of modern life already occurs through digital mediation. We form relationships through social media, conduct business through video conferences, and find entertainment through screens. If a holographic conversation feels more genuine than a typical Zoom meeting, and a holographic meal tastes better than corporate cafeteria offerings, perhaps the distinction between authentic and simulated experience is already more blurred than we'd care to admit. The holodeck doesn't just represent advanced technology, it forces us to confront fundamental questions about the nature of reality, identity, and human experience. Though given our track record with simpler technologies, we'll probably spend most of our time trying to figure out why the holographic printer still jams, and whether we need to update the artificial intelligence's software to stop it from scheduling meetings during lunch breaks. Well, my holographically enhanced employees, we've reached the end of another quantum recreational period. Today we've learned that creating perfect artificial realities requires solving the minor inconveniences of rewriting physics, achieving human-level artificial intelligence, and somehow making audio-visual equipment function reliably, which may be the most scientifically implausible requirement of all. We've discovered that the holodeck represents humanity's ultimate corporate fantasy, a space where every meeting could be productive, every training session engaging, and every coffee break could be taken on a beach in Tahiti without violating company policy. The technology demands advances in volumetric holography, force field generation, matter replication, and AI systems, sophisticated enough to maintain narrative coherence, while users inevitably attempt to seduce holographic versions of their colleagues or recreate that one episode of The Office, but with competent management. Perhaps most remarkably, we've found that the greatest challenge isn't the technology itself, but the philosophical implications of success. When artificial experiences become indistinguishable from reality, when holographic relationships feel more supportive than actual human interaction, and when simulated achievements provide genuine satisfaction, we're forced to confront uncomfortable questions about what makes life authentic. Though I suspect somewhere in the quantum foam of possibility, there's a universe where holodecks exist and are still somehow less reliable than the office Wi-Fi, and employees spend their time in virtual realities trying to escape to an even more virtual reality where the holographic technology actually works properly, which would explain the captain's log entry. Day 42. Still trapped in corporate holodeck. Replicator insists on serving only decaf. The real lesson from Renita's adventure isn't about the dangers of escapist technology, It's about the fundamental human need for environments where we can practice being better versions of ourselves without the immediate consequences of failure. Current VR research, haptic feedback systems, and AI development suggest we're perhaps 20 to 30 years away from primitive holodeck technology, though that timeline exists in a superposition of optimistically achievable and hopelessly naive, much like most corporate project schedules. Want to explore more photonic possibilities? Visit us at multiverseemployeehandbook.com, where you'll find fascinating science news and deep dives into immersive reality research. And if you've enjoyed today's artificially enhanced adventure, why not share it with a fellow reality-questioning colleague? Perhaps you know someone who's been spending suspiciously long periods in training sessions or has recently developed an unusual enthusiasm for employee development programs. Spread our signal like carefully controlled photonic interference patterns. This is your quantum coherent correspondent, reminding you that in the multiverse of immersive technology, we're all just trying to tell the difference between the simulation and the equally absurd reality of actual office life, though given recent advances in corporate dysfunction, the distinction may be more academic than practical. And somewhere in the depths of QIS's holographic training facility, Renita and Brad are still learning to communicate effectively while the square-haired boss practices his interdimensional management techniques, which, considering the alternative realities available, may be the most realistic training scenario of all.
Hello?
Hey, I'm Rob Corrigan, the human who dreamt up the Multiverse Employee Handbook, because I can't stop marveling at how strange and wonderful the universe is, and how often it behaves like a very large company with confusing corporate policies. In a world increasingly run by AI, I think it matters to be clear about what's human-made and what's conjured by machine magic. So here's the straight-up rundown. The host, David, is a professional voice actor. The voice you hear has been digitized using 11 Labs voice cloning technology, with his blessing and excellent enunciation. The episode thumbnails are created with OpenArt's AI models. Music and sound effects come from Pixabay, composed by human artists. Everything else, the writing, the jokes, the research, is 100% me, human hands, human brain, and occasional human muttering. Thanks for listening, and for being a good human in an increasingly automated cosmos. And if you like this show and make it this far, it would really mean a lot to me if you shared it with a colleague, a friend, or anyone. It's really the best way to make podcasts like this grow, and I sincerely appreciate it.
Rob, do stop ringing after hours. The kettle's on and I'm halfway through a biscuit. Toodaloo.